a little bit about escalation clauses, and we're already 1 hour in, so this has been a lot of valuable information. My phone is ringing off the hook, so I got people thinking that I'm available now, but don't wait. And I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on this, but we are getting, when we're representing sellers, we're getting offers, multiple offers, and now we start seeing this new clause. It's called an escalation clause, and I I personally am not a fan of it, but it is what it is, and with all my resources, I've actually created a form for us. But I'm going to tell you straight up why I have a problem with it and what's important. Um, and let me bring it up. Let me see if I can share my screen. So this is a form that'll be in the back office for you. It's not going to be it won't be inside the wizard. You would have to pull it separately. But there are four parts to really what an escalation clause is and what it does. The first part is knowing that you have a multiple offer situation and you're fighting and to compete and put your buyer's contract as the one that ultimately the seller agrees to accept. And so what an escalation clause simply is, hey, we're willing to, we're willing to tell you, seller, that we'll pay an amount, whatever is put into section 1 here, the fourth line, an amount, whatever that is, $500, $1,000, $2,000, especially respectively, greater than all the other offers that you've received. Okay. But, and this truly is the part I have hugely concerned with a maximum price. Okay. And I'm going to use an example. Let's say it's the asking price is $300,000 on a property, and you come in and say, I'm going to use an escalation clause with my buyer. So we're going to put in a full price offer. And then we're going to put we're going to say, hey, seller, you accept my offer. I'm going to give you $1,000 more than your highest other offer. But if somebody said, I'll give you $500,000, then you would be positioned to actually make a $501,000 offer on a $300,000 property, which would be ridiculous amount, right? So you have to have a cap. So you put in this box maximum price, let's say 325,000. So the problem that you've just done right there is you simply disclosed. Do we ever say, when we're a transaction broker, when a seller comes to us and say, when we have both sides, do you think the buyer would go higher when you have a written offer to present? You have a obligation of limited confidentiality. And what you just exposed is a maximum price that buyer will actually pay for property. So it's very dangerous to do that. But the push is coming at me, and I'm like, okay, we will do this. I've inserted a disclaimer on the fourth point here. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the second is that the seller in this agreement will be held to the responsibility to show some evidence that their offer is now only going, if accepted, will be only 1,000 more than the next greatest offer, which means you need to show me a page 1 of the other offer. So if you got an offer of 320,000, I said I would go to 325. So essentially, the terms of this agreement says that means we're going to do business at 321,000, but you're also going to show me evidence that you had a 320 offer. Okay. And so if this gets agreed on and this is executed, then the escalation purchase price in that example would be put here on clause 3, 321,000. This is the only way that I feel comfortable allowing this to happen is this disclaimer, because I'm going to be totally honest with you when I say this. We had dealt with a situation like this, and it would be exactly how I would operate. I'm going to tell you, if I was the agent representing a homeowner and listing and selling their property, and we got offers like this, unless the buyer and seller signed this document, there's no obligation to either party to the terms of this agreement. And when you insert an amount maximum price, all I would do as a listing agent tell my seller, hey, I think we got a buyer that will pay $325,000 for your home. They told us what they would pay. And I would simply go back to that buyer's agent and say, hey, you know what? If we can do 325, we'll do business with you. And if we write up that contract and sign it, but not include this or have signatures on this, there was no obligation for the seller to have to show any kind of evidence. And you've disclosed that price. So if you look at the disclaimer, buyer acknowledges, let me move this around. Buyer acknowledges and affirms that the buyer's offer and escalation to them has been made at buyer's own discretion regarding disclosure of information and terms herein, and the buyer agrees to hold realtors and brokers harmless with regards to negotiations of the final accepted price. Because I know that this is happening, and we actually had, and this actually goes back about a year ago, for a foreclosure property. Similar thing happened, and we went into contract. We had the listing, and we disregarded this escalation clause. We presented the full price that we knew the buyer was willing to pay. We went into contract, and all of a sudden, 2 months later, we have an attorney calling saying, hey, you were supposed to show proof. And the buyer, was demanding all over the place that everyone was supposed to show proof of the previous offer being only 1,000 less. And it was very simple. I went back, I wrote a little note to the lender. I said, the attorney, and I said, you know what? There is nothing in the contract that says we had to do that. And I had advised the listing agent to do what we did. Turns out that we did not. However, I don't know what the result of it was, but the buyer still pursued legal action against the agent and the brokerage that represented him, because he felt like he was misguided by professionals that caused him harm for disclosing, because they made the suggestion and they had the document of the amount of money that he was willing to pay. And he was to believe that we had an obligation to the terms of that addendum. So that's sort of the gist of it. And so we have this. And if you want to ask any questions about it or any input, I'd be happy to share it. But I did create this. It is available. I truly believe you have an obligation to your customer if you're working with the buyer, that they totally understand what you're really doing. You're disclosing a different price that supposedly you're willing to pay. And unless this is executed, there is no obligation for them to have to prove that you've only presented an offer X amount over a previous offer. So anyone? None? Does this help you, Jessica? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, it does. I have been approached a couple of times, listings that I had. And then, of course, I am currently working with these buyers that are desperately basically they're submitting offers $10,000 above the actual listing price. And it occurred to me that perhaps utilizing the escalation clause, they did not need to so bluntly go so high because they may not need to. And so that's what it triggered in my mind that perhaps this could be a benefit to this particular buyer.
Okay. And I'm not saying that a listing agent and a seller isn't going to kind of follow what the this says and sign it and execute and agree with it. But I'm
Yes.
also, hopefully you can understand where I'm coming from and see that what could potentially, happen. Now your buyer, if they, if, obviously if the seller and the listing agent comes back and said, you know what, we'll take the maximum price,
Mhm.
your buyer doesn't have to agree and buy the property. But if you have, for instance, two offers and both of them have a similar escalation clause, a good listing agent, I'm going to tell you, will be able to play those offers. Now, here's some of the other conversation I get. Well, the house is probably never going to appraise.
Mhm.
You know what? I think what you look at is, hey, let's just get a contract at the maximum price we can get, right? So if the appraisal still comes back, let's say we contracted at 325 and the appraisal comes back at 311, we still benefited, the seller still benefited by $11,000 over what the full price offer could have been on the listing agreement. So I'm sort of saying you always look at it, don't look at a problem that doesn't exist until the problem exists. And anything above 300,000 to my seller is sort of free money, right? So you just take one stride at a time. But the first thing that I would always look at first, I'd look at the terms and the probability of the ability to buy. And then I go for whoever wants that has that probability is going to pay the most. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to negotiate it. And then deal with what the appraisal might come in at, and then we'll work that hoop and then down the line. So but hopefully this will help all of us that feel like this is a positive thing and a way to help our buyers. So I want to be accommodating to it, but in the same, I had to figure out how to make sure we totally disclose to our buyer potentially the harm that it could create, and that they can't hold us responsibility for the information that we've now disclosed to the other side. So
Yeah.
hopefully that helps. Would you have any more questions about it, Jessica?
No, I definitely do always use the appraisal contingency,
Mhm.
because I figure that no matter how much they're offering there as the maximum, that I want to make sure that if the appraisal comes below, the buyers have the opportunity to revisit the price at that time.
Sure. Excellent. So if you use this, you need to put on your actual contract where you have the near last page where it has all the check boxes for the addendums you're
Yeah,
including.
page 12.
Make sure you check the other and put escalation addendum.
Mhm.
So at least it tries to provide it to be a actual component of the contract, and tries to hold the glue to the two together. Because again, if they they can certainly come back and try to just verbally negotiate it up, and then everybody changes the terms. But if this seller does not sign this, then they don't have the obligations to it, and
Mhm.
that's what's important to know. And if I were the listing agent on the other side, I've already told you how I would treat it. So it would be, hey, they'll pay this much. Let's go for it. And I'm just telling you what I would do, because I'm like, oh, they just told us how much money they would pay. And I'm just going to go for that. Let's just push this addendum aside and see what they'll do. And then if you didn't do it, I could go to the next one, that also did a similar thing on their contract. So we all want to win. We want to give our, clients the best opportunity. But I do, I just hedge on a little bit of caution when you're just, displaying, sort of, in my opinion, was very confidential information to the other side. Anything on on Facebook, Maria?
No, nothing.
None? Okay. So this will be in the buyer's forms. It will be in there today. So if you want to, explore this and use it, it can be used. I am authorizing it. And hopefully this will help you in some of your situations, but just, know the pros and cons of it at the same time. Okay, I'm going to show you really quick where to find our new escalation clause addendum if you should choose to use it. Let me share screen. And I'm in the back office. So obviously this is for making a buyer offer. So the form will be found under forms, buyer forms, and then in the third column under comprehensive writers and addendums, the last one, purchase price escalation addendum. So you would click here to download it, and then you can open it up and use it. And that's exactly how you find it. If you have any questions about the use of this form, or any circumstances while using this form, always please reach out to a broker for the proper assistance to help you. Thank you very much for watching this video, and make it a great day.